On behalf of Pat McLoughlin, I would like to extend a warm welcome to you all. I'm Sheila Regan, and there's a touch, I think, of deja vu about this evening at this gathering, because we meet again almost a year to the day since Pat was here launching his first collection of short stories last year, To Weave with Words. And now we're here for a second collection, From Head to Tail. I'm beginning to wonder if Pat is going to make a habit of this. But Pat is a proud Tipperary man, as we know. And he has a dual citizenship in Limerick. And I just wonder about his fealty. I'm going to test it on Sunday. But that's for Loella. And I thought, since he's a proud Tipperary man, that I'd look up some other Tipperary people who are famous. And I found Ned Kelly, described as an Australian bushman. There was Liam Clancy of the Clancy Brothers. And one that took my fancy, and you probably all the Tipperary people probably know about, Paddy McCarthy, who left Tipperary and hurling behind him in the 1900s and set off to teach in Argentina, and he set up a famous football club. Then you have the writers, and among them, of course, Charles Kickham and Donald Ryan. And Pat said that he only started writing regularly reading when he retired from the ESB, which probably gave him food for thought and sowed seeds for future stories. But writers are all sorts, as we know, and they come from all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts of different lifestyles. But before they were famous, they had other lives, of course, and other jobs, because everybody isn't famous instantly. But as I said, Pat worked in the ESB. Dickens was a factory worker, Agatha Christie was a pharmacy assistant, and Kickham was a female, and Donald Ryan a civil servant. Now, Ireland, of course, has produced some of the world's most celebrated short story writers, from James Joyce to Frank O'Connor, and indeed continues to do so. And the short story is described as a brief fictional prose narrative that is shorter than a novel. The form encourages economy of setting and concise narrative. Stephen King describes the short story as a different kind of a thing altogether. He said it's like a short story, he said it's like a kiss in the dark from a stranger. Less romantically, Philip Roth declared that the road to hell is paved with works in progress. But Pat, I'm sure and I know, is on a well-trodden road in the opposite direction, because his new collection of short stories From Head to Tail is here just a year after his first collection, which is wonderful. He acknowledges the support provided by the Limerick Writers Centre, and that provides a space for writers and aspiring writers, and he says that without the Writers Centre, his works would not have seen the light of day. Now, it's my great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce Dominic Taylor, who is here from the Limerick Writers Centre.
Here good, August Fault Road. Tá Sarah until the show. As you're aware, as Sheila mentioned there, the book relaunching tonight is published by the Limerick Writers Centre. The Limerick Writers Centre was founded in 2008 as a not-for-profit organisation to support and promote writers from Limerick City and County and the North Munster region through readings, workshops and publishing activities. And in the 11 years since then, our aim has been to carve out a distinctive position in relation to writing and literature in Limerick. It is run by a voluntary board of directors. The Limerick Writers Centre operates on the principle that everyone, without exception from every part of society, has a creative voice. And we at the Limerick Writers Centre work to provide an outlet for and celebrate that voice. Every person's creative literary output, whether through poetry, a novel, memoir, song, matters, and does, as Seamus Heaney suggests, function as bearers of value. And one of the ways we support writing and literature in Limerick is through our small, independent, community publishing project. From Head to Tail by Pat McLoughlin is the 88th title we have published since establishing our community publishing program, and we are very proud of that. We're also delighted and honoured that it is the second book we have published by Pat, who is one of the many distinguished graduates of our very successful writing course for older people given by poet and writer Ron Carey every September at our centre in Limerick City. And I believe that this book not only adds significantly to our catalogue, but also it is a significant contribution to the history of Limerick literature in general. Now, as I said, one of the ways we support writing and literature is through our community publishing project. In the past 25 years or so, media mergers have swallowed up many small independent publishing firms. And today, some of the largest publishing houses are famous for having more accountants than literary editors. Consequently, publishing is now almost entirely a matter of profitability. And the whole concept of reaching out to a broader public and getting ideas across to people who might not normally have bought a book is disappearing. And we have in effect a censorship imposed by the tastes of the mass market. But strange, crazy, intellectually innovative or experimental books are published in small to medium print runs. And that is the task of smaller houses such as ourselves. Small publishing houses are not made up of marketing and PR experts. They are staffed by people who do books because of their passion or strong opinions, certainly not because of the profits they might generate. They publish books that otherwise would not be published at all. We need to realise that value lies not always in the mass market or the global enterprise, but in small independent enterprises. And despite the advent of the internet, we believe that a physical book offers a more real experience than the oft-times hyper-reality of electronic media. And this is why we publish books like From Head to Tail. Books that can rekindle a love for literature. Printing books may be an old technology, but in my view, it is still cutting edge and still the best way to ensure the free circulation of ideas and freedom of expression. It is in this context that I think it is appropriate that the 88th book published by the Limerick Writers' Centre is by a local author. Each year, we work with around 300 emerging and established writers, creating learning opportunities through classes and a platform for sharing and feedback. We host more than 50 events annually, including readings, book launches, creative writing classes, and 2 festivals. And I may add, with little or no funding. There is an intrinsic value and profound importance in supporting local artists, and in our case, local writers, within their communities, as it serves to memorialise our cultural history, fosters a thriving literary community, and inspires a passion for literature in others. Tonight, I would like to congratulate Pat on the publication of his new book, and I believe that it will be read by many, both for its humour and its exploration of the human condition in all its guises. May it rest easy beside many people's beds. Gorvanda.
Thank you, Dominic. Dr. Paddy Fulham is a native son from Ardagh, and he has spent his life in education from primary school teacher all the way to lecturer in Mary McLoughlin College in Limerick. He has written the foreword to Pat's book, and he says that there is a genuine authenticity there and in the stories in this eclectic collection. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Paddy Fulham.
The year recorded, my apologies, I have a bit of a head cold, but I'll do my best to keep going. Before I start mentioning about Pat in the book, I just want to address what Sheila spoke about on Sunday, the little matter of Limerick and Tipperary playing in the Munster Senior Hurling Final. And I just want to say that over the next few minutes, you will have to understand how this very proud Limerick man will have to lavish praise on an equally proud Tipperary man. And then Pat comes Sunday, rivalry shall be resumed. So on to the book. The Irish Shanachie, or storyteller, was immensely important in keeping alive the oral tradition of handing on and creating stories for generations of Irish people. The short story writer was in some ways an adoption of that role. In other words, it takes a good story writer to take on the mantle of a good storyteller. And believe me, Pat knows how to tell a story, and hence, that makes him an extremely good short story writer. Pat has what I would describe as a captivating conversational style that draws the writer in, but then, in an unexpected turn of events, has the reader absorbed on the plot and the characters because they take an unexpected life of their own. Also, in this particular genre, unlike the romantic novel, the conclusion is not that they lived happily ever after. Indeed, in one of his short stories, The Changing of the Guard, it ends, and they all lived unhappily ever after. If you want to find out how that conclusion came about, you'll have to read the short story yourselves. So, what Pat does is he draws the reader into his own creative space. So the reader must interpret the conclusion, and thus, subconsciously, becomes part of the literary process. And I think that is quite stimulating. Another one of Pat's strengths is his insight into the complex nature of human relationships. As I point out in the preface, you will find fulfilled and unrequited love, generosity and greed, forgiveness and revenge, sweetness and bitterness, tolerance and intolerance, companionship and loneliness, honesty and deceit, the full spectrum of the intricate patterns of human interactions. In working with Pat's stories, one attribute that really struck me was his ability to empathize. He's very much aware of the human tendency to pass judgment on those who appear to be different, without first considering the circumstances and the complexities of the situation, and also how people are very capable of making a quantum change. One of his stories, The Brainwave, and I just read the first paragraph, that is very brief, starts like this. Mickey Muldoon was not a nice man. He didn't get along with people and wore a constant scowl on his face. Everything in his world was wrong, and anyone who came in contact with him would be dragged to the depths of despair. To quote the great Einstein, he had a problem for every solution. Again, you'll have to read the story to see the transformation that came over Mickey Muldoon. Through the generations, the short story has always been a powerful instrument for protest, in pointing out to readers the need to be informed and how change must be embraced. I believe that Pat was ahead of the curve in his last anthology of short stories when he reminded us of the responsibilities to ensure the survival of planet Earth. Again, in one of his short stories here, The Caddy, he takes up the same theme. Again, he quotes the great Einstein. If the bee disappeared off the surface of the globe, then man would only have 4 years left. No more bee, no more pollination, no more plants, no more animals, no more man. I don't know if you saw a program on Wednesday night on, I think it was on RT2, did you see it? And it carried out the very same theme, where that wonderful little creature, the bee, is actually the greatest contributor that we have to the survival of planet Earth. And we should bear in mind that we only have planet A. At the moment, for us, there's not a planet B. I couldn't help but add, no more honey, but a lot of food for thought. In conclusion, can I say what a privilege it has been to work with Pat and to play a very small part in the production of this excellent anthology of short stories. Now the 2 books are in the hands of the readers. I have no doubt but there will be a huge demand for the completion of the trilogy. I congratulate Pat. I have now handed him more work to do. I know he's be well able to do it, I look forward to book number 3. So I'm going to read the Mahmoud Balea agus Pat. Go my father board. Thank you very much.
Now we come to the most important part of the evening, indeed the very reason why we're all here, the launch. Deputy Patrick O'Donovan, TD, Minister of State of the Department of Finance and the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, is another native son from Newcastle West. His political career started early for him as he was first elected to the law in 2011. In a previous life, he was an industrial chemist before becoming a primary teacher. Here tonight to launch Pat's second collection of short stories from head to tail. I give you Minister Patrick O'Donovan.
Your own family are an integral part of making sure that everything that you do in life, whether it is in a voluntary capacity or in a work capacity or in a retirement capacity or whatever, is able to be done. Norma Prindle had a go at me on the way in. She said, Boris Johnson normally arrives at a function with a few lines, puffs and goes up onto the stage and leaves the script after him and walks on to the next one, gives the same story and this is what he's known for. But Norma, I was in fine before I came here. I wasn't puffing and puffing. I hope I didn't talk about Pat McLoughlin's book down there. And if I did, that helped him. But can I just say as well, look, first of all, I said it last year, and I said it as well, at a couple of the launches that I've done above in the library. Anybody that commits any of their thoughts to print, or anybody that commits any of their thoughts to a canvas, or music, or dance, or sculpting, or anything else, they're a bit like us. They're a bit like politicians in some ways. They're putting themselves up on a poster and up on a pole for people to criticise them. And the criticism can oftentimes be warranted, and sometimes the criticism can be totally unwarranted. But the one thing is that the similarities are there to be seen in the sense that it's a very brave thing to do, and what Pat has done here the second time around now, it's a very brave thing for him to do, to commit his thoughts to writing and to commit his thoughts to a book, and a very well put together book in terms of its presentation. But the thoughts that he has put down in the book here are really a reflection, I suppose, in many cases of his childhood, and in many cases of how he grew up and where he grew up. And I know that he says he's from Tipperary, but whether the Limerick or Tipperary thing, one thing he's a very proud Newcastle West man, and he has contributed an awful lot to the town here. But his thoughts and his reflections, particularly as it runs through the book, and I just want to read out 2 small parts. As I was reading it during the week, one of the things that struck me was the role of women and how women's roles have evolved, and how, I suppose, really his reflections are of a particular period in time when the role of women has changed dramatically and has really changed in a very positive way. But I just read you a small excerpt here from one part of the story. I don't want to tell you what the story is about because it kind of kills the story. But in some ways it will actually give you an insight into maybe how women were regarded and how they were treated and how they regarded themselves at a particular time in Ireland. So it says, so could she be right? Could I have the sickness? Tess wonders. I have little or no feelings for a wonderful man who would do anything for me, and I was also prepared to give away my baby. And am I a bad person? A sadness and a sense of loneliness pervaded her mind and her body. She felt alone and isolated. She was missing something. Could it be the solace, support and love that Paddy imbued in spades? Could it be the subtle, undetectable connection that exists between a mother and her baby? Could it be a combination of both? Am I a cold person, incapable of love? Was the losing of my mother now taking its toll? Did I grieve properly for her? And it goes on, and the story goes on, but it's of a kind of a generation in Ireland, 1950s, 1960s Ireland, which was really, I suppose, almost trapped in a way that, the 1950s, particularly late 1940s after the war, where Ireland was really trapped. And it was trapped between, on the one hand, economic stagnation, a lack of progression, no real vision in the country, and a not a nice place in many ways for many people, particularly for people on the fringes. and particularly in many cases for women. And looking back at this book now, I suppose as well, we're very fortunate that we can look back at it. It gives you an indication as to how Ireland has changed, and how Ireland has changed for the good. And I suppose as I was driving back from Fines, I was kind of wondering to myself, well, where would Ireland be if you hadn't the visionaries of people like Sean Lemass, who stood forward in the 1960s and took us into what was now what was then the European Economic Community, and right up to the enormous pint of Boris Johnson. So the Ireland that we have now is really, I suppose, an Ireland that has changed massively over a really short period of time. And that period of time being from Pat's youthfulness right up to where he is today. And that element of change and that amount of change that has happened in Ireland over a really short period of time, I believe, is only my opinion, is down in particular to our entry into the EEC. And rather than looking west to America as a place in which we could offload our children and dump our problems by way of immigration, we looked east to Europe for opportunities, for learnings, and for where people could gain experiences, and where now we're part of a massive international union of countries. So his book kind of charts a social change in Ireland as well that I think is really important. And sometimes when you're listening to people, particularly in radio programs and things like that, and they're talking of the 1950s and the 1960s, there's this, not in cases, there's this veil of nostalgia. But when you lift up the veil of nostalgia and you're looking under the bonnet, there's some things that happened, and there's some things that were, that were done in many cases, and Pat refers to them in a very subtle way, that weren't very nice. And I think it's a journey, not only in terms of his book, but as well as that, there's a journey that this country has come forward with, in the way in which we treat people on the margins, and the way in which we treat people that are particularly vulnerable. And whether that's, as I say, is expectant mothers and women in general, people that were, for instance, intellectually disabled, people that had their own difficulties in life, people that had mental health problems. The manner in which this country has changed for the good can sometimes be reflected in books like this, because it gives you, particularly as a person who didn't grow up in that generation, it gives us an insight into what kind of an Ireland we had in a relatively short period of time ago. And as well as that, I think, the book as well kind of chronicles other elements that are important as well. Gives you a great insight into his view of the landscape. And Paddy Fulham there referenced a while ago the golfing element of it. Pat McLoughlin called up to the house there last week. He was talking to Eileen, he was talking about golf, and she said, "Do you play much now, Pat?" And he said, "No, not really, not since I retired." But it also gives you an insight into how he, there's almost when you're listening, and when you're listening, as I said, when you're reading it, you're almost hearing the story being told by Pat, particularly in one element of it, where he was talking about the pub and the drinking of Guinness, and it being referred to as barrels of blood. But I just want again to go back to where when I finished reading it during the week, and again one of the thoughts that I was saying to myself, well, what are the things that jump out with me in relation to this book? Again, it's about women, and again another area not too disconnected from the previous one. And he says, to make a long story short, Bridget's condition improved, and in 5 days she was moved from intensive care to a recovery ward. She was devastated when she discovered that she had lost her little boy. As we hugged and cried together, we decided to give him a name, Peter. This was his grandfather's name, and he adored Bridget. We also agreed that life was for living and money was useless in times like this. Everything can be taken in the blink of an eye. I think during those few days the important things in life came clearly into view, and sadly it took a tragedy to show us the way. And it was one of the things that I took out of it as well was how he writes about death in this context, and how he writes about tragedy, and how the tragedy impacts on the person, particularly when the person is reflecting on death within a family. So it's a lovely book, and really is a lovely read, and I have to say I really enjoyed reading it during the week. And Paddy Fulham there referred to the importance of the Irish storyteller, and that is hugely significant as well. Not just in relation to whether we're looking back at the 1950s and 60s or whatever period of time we're looking back at, but that we're able to relay stories from one generation to the other. My father, Arthur Mercer, was always a great man to remember stories and recount stories, but he had a temptation that his uncle John Whelan said was to add on vet. So he added on his own bit onto the story, and of course the longer the story went on, of course, the more it was embellished. So that now the next generation and myself, when I'm recounting stories of people of my father's generation that are gone, and of course you can't slander or libel the dead, God forbid them, that you can also add on that. But that's the importance of it, and I think we're losing that in Ireland as well. Unfortunately, we've in some spheres, and it's I suppose in rural areas it's still not the case, and in small towns and in villages it's still not the case. But there's a crassness that's strepped in Ireland recently, and it's through the advent of social media. We all use social media, but unfortunately there's a cheapness now that is coming in as well, and there's a cheapness in relation to comment, and it's really regrettable. And I would say that an awful lot of that comment, is ill-informed in some cases. And Michael Healy-Rae referred to it in the late late show there not too recently, where he said, well, the person that's up at 2 o'clock in the morning with nothing better to do than to go on a laptop and criticise somebody that they've never met before in their life. And there is a cheapness there. And of course, the keyboard warriors, unfortunately, they're not too few and far between. There are a lot of them in our midst. What never fails to surprise me is that they're all prepared to do this by sticking their name on it. That they have no fear of God nor man, that they can stick their name down and criticise somebody that's prepared to do something. And criticism is an important thing, and critique is an important thing, and that was where the whole concept of literary output came in the first place, that you put yourself out there to be critiqued and to be criticised. But in the critique of this, I'd have to say, it's a lovely piece of work, and it's a very brave thing for somebody to do. And maybe some of the people that are up at 2 o'clock in the morning with nothing better to do than give out about somebody else might actually like to join the Limerick Writers Club as well. Although I'd say somehow you'd probably be sending a few of them back. But look, I just want to say that Pat has done an awful lot of very positive work here in the Castle West over many years, and I suppose the turnout of people here, of his friends and neighbours and people that he worked with, people that he golfed with and everything else, and the Tipperary people as well. He has made a big positive impact, and he has, since he retired, he's taking up an awful lot of voluntary roles here in town, and he's gotten an opportunity to do other things that he wouldn't have done with the ESB, and we're very grateful for that. And he has made a very contribution to this place, and this place is now the place he calls home. Tipperary is the place that he, I suppose, that he will always hark back to, and it is his native place, but Newcastle West is now his home. He's made it his home, he's made a big impact in his home. And so I think it's important as Newcastle West people and as people from West Limerick that we're able to come out with you, Pat, and celebrate what it is that is your second book now, and Paddy Fulham has thrown down the gauntlet to you. Paddy Fulham then, of course, speaks before me, and has all of the notes of the doctorate that he has so professionally put together, and coming from his academic role was in Mary McLoughlin College, it's a wonder he didn't throw it out in Latin. He learned really well. He refers to the beehive, and I was in Dublin there recently with AIB, and I was being at a meeting with Ella there, so we were making small talk over a cup of tea, and one of the lads was saying, would you believe, he said, no, Minister, we have a beehive on the roof of the building here, and I said, oh, yeah, he said, we're making our small contribution to the ecology and to the futurement of the betterment of men. And I said, well, that's great. I said, you're making sure, I said, that you're going to keep us alive to get the last penny that we owe you. So, look, I just want to say, Pat, thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to come down and say a few words about it. As I say, look, it's a kind of a social anthology. It's a reflection, really, of an Ireland, in some cases, in some of the stories that are gone, and it's a reflection as well, in some cases, of an Ireland that's still there. And it shows a great how human relations have changed. But as I said as well, it's a book that forces us to reflect on an Ireland in many cases that still has questions to answer and still has to come to terms with some things from our past. And I think collectively, we all have an obligation to try and do that, and we all have an obligation to reflect back on some of the darker days in this country, particularly post-independence. An awful lot of our dark days were pre-independence, but by God, we had some fairly dark days post-independence as well. And books like this, from people who grew up in that time, are really important because they force us as a modern generation to look back and to say, well, that's the sort of stuff that shouldn't happen anymore, and that's the sort of thing that we have to make sure that we prevent from happening in the future. So, just before I finish up, I want to acknowledge my colleagues, Councillor Tom Ruddle and Councillor Jerome Scanlon, who has just joined us. I want to wish you well, Pat. Congratulate you most sincerely from everybody here. This is a lovely book, and I want to wish you well. I know you have a bigger work in the offing, and Paddy has said that you need to do a third of these as well. So, no more than in your time in DSP, I'd say they'll see very little you in the golf course now that you'll be writing so much. So, listen, thanks very much, and best of luck, Pat.
We've heard from many people tonight that the most important person is yet to be introduced. Pat shared his book with me, he's hot off the presses, and I know that apart from family, his two passions are God and philosophy, and I failed to draw any kind of analogy. I just decided God and philosophy. I've read neither of which I know anything about, but they're his passions. So I scanned the table of contents to see references to these matters, and indeed they are in there. Somerset Maugham said, "If you can tell stories, create characters, devise incidents, and have sincerity and passion, it doesn't matter damn how you write." Norma Prendeville describes Pat's book as people with characters we know or recognise, and dialogue that clips along with warmth and understanding. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the author of From Head to Tail, Pat McLoughlin.
Came in a falter to everybody. Thank you very much for making the trip tonight. A lovely evening, and I'm sure you could have probably better things to do, but I really appreciate you being here. Thanks to the previous speakers for their kind words and for their interpretation of the book. Christ, I was getting emotional now myself. I got a few, and some of them were here, I got a few texts and WhatsApp messages during the week, and they were kind of suggesting that my writing had some effect on climate change. When I wrote my first story in the Canaries with a hurricane, the hotel was hit by a hurricane. Last year we had a serious heat wave, and yesterday was 29 degrees. Now, I'm nervous about writing another collection. I'm afraid what my brain, maybe an earthquake or a volcanic eruption or something, even though Paddy Fulham has suggested that I complete the trilogy. People they always ask me where I get my ideas from, and I suppose they just seem to appear out of the ether, the universe, whatever. And of course from past experiences and from interfacing with the people I meet on a daily basis. I think we all write stories, whether we're, and the minister mentioned social media and all that, but when we write a text like that's a little story, we write a birthday card or a Christmas card or whatever, they're all stories. I mean, Ernest Hemingway's famous short story, I suppose, first sale, baby shoes, never worn. There's only 6 words in it, but I think it says an awful lot. You don't have to write volumes to get the point across, and I think he was the king of them, as I said. Robertson Davis said with regard to writing, to grow as a writer, you've got to be willing to risk it all each time you sit down to write. You've got to be open, brave, curious. The act of writing brings us to the point of discovering on the page something we didn't know we knew until we wrote it. Might be worth saying that again, something we didn't know we knew until we wrote it. And I have a poem coming up to kind of explain that a bit, if you can explain something with a poem. He said, don't let reality cloud your imagination. Look at the sky and find once again those long-tailed dragons and sailing ships. Wake up to the world as though you are seeing it each day for the first time. Question the way things are. Imagine new choices. right from the child in you. And he goes on to say, to ask an author where he gets his ideas from is like asking a spider where he buys his thread. The author gets his story from the same place as the spider, right out of his own guts. Bit crude, but I get the point. So, you know, when you talk about people not knowing what they knew until they wrote it, I just read this little poem. It's kind of quirky. It's called I Hate Poems. I tried to write a poem, but poems are too hard. Rhyming is for losers and airy-fairy bards. To put a pen to paper and write about your life, I've had enough of all of those. They only cause me strife. Free verse script is awful, for fools without a beat. Repetition's far too simple, just repeat, repeat, repeat. Those lovey-dovey oldie things, that wishy-washy crap, and poems about hatred, you all deserve a slap. Spare me all your ramblings, I don't care how you feel. Your self-expression surely stinks of mouldy day-old leaf. Your metaphors are useless, your imagery is vile. Your sense of fiction makes me gag. I cannot stand your style. I look at what I've written. This jumble of cliches. Looks like I wrote a bloody poem, so I'm the one to blame. So that kind of, I suppose, makes the point. Words can't adequately describe or acknowledge the assistance, encouragement, and reassurance given to me by a number of people. I suppose in an effort to bring this collection from its embryonic stage and to position it between the artistic covers of this book. I would like to express my sincere thanks and appreciation to the following. To Dominic Taylor of the Limerick Writers Centre for his continued support, editing and validation of my work. When we write something, we don't know if people will like or loathe it. We wait for their approval and validation. Once again, Dominic has taken my collection and with patience, diligence, integrity and expertise has fashioned them into this lovely publication. To Dr. Paddy Fulham for proofreading my stories and for his eloquently written preface and blurb. My stories will go nowhere until they have passed his objective eyes and masterly intellect. From the time he takes my collection to the time he returns it, I wait patiently for his wise comments, insightful suggestions, and yes, his red biro marks. His modest demeanour belies a well-informed brain and sagacious mind. Apart from his generosity of spirit, just to be in his company is an enlightening experience. To Lottie Bender for her wonderful cover design. She used her masterful talents to capture the concept of the title and contents. It's a beautifully artistic and abstract cover, and I've had a lot of favourable comments so far on it. To Norma Prindable, again for her eloquent blurb, her unwavering support, her kind words, and her articulate and complimentary comments and columns in the Limerick Leader. In 2017, I saw an ad in the Limerick Leader for a creative writing course for older people. It was on the Limerick Writers Centre. I decided to give it a try. I liked the idea. I had done a few previous writing courses, but not for older people. And when I parked the car, it was a Saturday morning, I parked the car in Perry Square. And I sat in the car for a minute and I thought, what in the name of God am I doing here? Well, I turned the car and head for home. Anyway, I got out of my comfort zone and I made my way, trudged my way to number 12. And of course, when I crossed the threshold, it was like going into a wonderland. I met fantastic people, some of them my own age, some of them older, and they had fantastic stories to tell. There were times when we laughed There was times when the room was full of laughter, and there was times when there was tears all over the place. So, I mean, you know, the previous speaker spoke about the emotion of these situations, but they were speaking and writing about their past experiences. The course was conducted by, as Dominic said, Ron and Carey, and Ron imparted his knowledge like generously and copiously. He was a published poet, and after reading my stories, he suggested I talk to Dominic with a view to getting them published. The rest, as I say, is history, and I'm extremely grateful to Ron for his encouragement and his pushing, gentle pushing. I suppose one of the reasons why I decided to write a second collection was the tremendous support I received from the readers of my first publication, To Weave with Words. I gained enormous confidence from the people who stopped me in the street, sent emails, texts, or picked up the phone to say how much they enjoyed the stories. Thank you all so much, and I hope you get the same enjoyment from my second collection. You will never know the positive effect your kind but powerful words had on me. So I'm going to read a little piece now, and it was kind of prophetic in a way. It wasn't organised now. We didn't discuss it, but the story I'm going to read for is about the bowl Mickey Muldoon. He was a contrarian man, but I suppose he as a man said, he had a problem for every solution, but he didn't like himself, he didn't like the world around him, he didn't like people. People would cross to the other side of the street to avoid him. But as you could expect, maybe he got ill, and he got very seriously ill. He had a 25% chance of survival, but he survived. And I suppose he got to a stage when it was all going to go, and he realised all of a sudden that maybe this place isn't so bad at all, you know. So anyway, he made a full recovery, but he had, as Jane Joyce said, he had an epiphany, and he changed his life totally, and he started to visit schools and talk to children and all that. And one of the things I came across, I don't know if some of you might have heard of it, but haibun. Kind of the haiku would be kind of your Japanese poetry, but the haibun is kind of a mixture of poetry and prose. So I've kind of attempted it in this story, and this is kind of in the middle of the story. Paddy eloquently went through the first chapter, if you like. He started to visit schools in the area and speaking to children. They looked forward to his visits and loved what he had to say. He started and finished each session with the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Everyone is a choice, he would declare. When you wake up in the morning, you can make a decision to be happy or miserable for the remainder of the day. People can make you unhappy unless you allow them. The ultimate choice is yours. I should know I was that soldier. Each creature on the planet wants to be happy. Animals find it by following their instincts, he continued. We are no different. We crave happiness, but we search for it in the wrong places. We seek it externally, in wealth, fame, power, beauty, success, etc. People can get richer and richer and still not be happy. So what do? They accumulate more wealth, get a new partner, a new car, a new house, but despite all this, happiness still manages to evade it. Happiness is our natural state. Look at the little baby in its mother's arms, smiling and making cute cooing sounds. Once the baby is warm, fed and dry, it is happy. As the baby gets older, it is conditioned to take on all the perceived cares, worries and troubles of life. When I get my exam, I'll be happy. When I get a job, I'll be happy. When I get married, I'll be happy. When I get that big house, I'll be happy. When I get a promotion, I'll be happy. When my kids go to college and get a job, I'll be happy. When I retire and shake off all my stress, I'll be happy. That person thinks that happiness is just around the next corner. It's out there somewhere in the ether. Happiness is within, but we are not aware of it. We rarely look inside. It's there, waiting to be tapped. The time to be happy is now. Be happy with your school, your friends, with your learning. Be happy with what you have. Be happy with what you don't have and don't want. Live your lives in the present, not in some imagined future Valhalla. While you fret about the past, worry about the future, or make ambitious plans, your life and living continues, sometimes ignored, he would have told. Mickey also told him that when he was angry with the world and all who inhabited it, he attracted like-minded people who were also in bad places. Misery likes company, he would explain. He often recited a poem, one he had written when he found happiness after many years of misery and suffering. You are truly a wonderful person. Believe it because it's a fact. You are part of a perfect creation. Accept it and never look back. We worry, we fret, and we bother about plagues that will never appear, transposing our state of pure stillness to anxiety, disease, and fear. Mother Earth will spin on her axis and herald another new dawn, a day filled with option and promise that comes sunset forever is gone. The things that arise in this moment with care and attention in view, life only subsists in the present. Tomorrow is not open to view. Tread light on your stony pathway. Show compassion in trouble and strife. Give no mind to the standing ovations as you stare in the drama of life. Live your life to the fullest, each day as if it's your last. Observe each step on your journey. Watch the future slide into the past. So stay in this wonderful present. It will melt all your troubles away. The future and past are illusions. The only thing real is today. That's kind of the middle part of the story. As Paddy said, there's a lot more in there as well. So, just to move on, I need to thank a few people. Firstly, I'd like to thank Minister Patrick O'Donovan for taking the time out of his busy schedule to launch my book. You did me a tremendous honour, Patrick, and for that I'm extremely grateful. Thank you also for the kind words about my wife, family, and you spoke about the contributions I've made to Newcastle West. Newcastle West has been very good to me. For the Long Courthouse for the wonderful hospitality, Trina in particular, I know she's here, and for putting this beautiful room at our disposal. To poor Ron Carey for his encouragement and masterful tuition. To Dr. Paddy Fulham for his generosity, for generously imparting his incisive wisdom and invaluable advice. To Norman Prendeville, Limerick leader, Pauline O'Connor, Weekly Observer, West Limerick 102, Limerick 95 FM. To Tony Hayes, Newcastle West, Anne Lyons, Abbeyfield, and O'Garvey's Rathkeil for stocking my books in their shops. To my writing colleagues in Desmond Scribblers for their continued support. And we got a little grant last year through Limerick County Council, and I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Michael Collins. I don't think he's here tonight, but he managed to secure a bit of funding for us. And to the councillors here tonight, I'd just like to say the begging bowl is being ready for this year.
You
To everyone here tonight, your presence has made this a night to remember. Some of you will have inspired me down through the years with your stories, your encouragement and positive feedback. And that's the main reason why I'm standing here tonight. To my family for their unwavering support, can't forget those, they're over here. Finally, I would like to thank our wonderful MC, Sheila O'Regan, who, once again did a fantastic job. Sheila is a wonderful broadcaster, a historian and a board member of IMA, Irish Museum of Modern Art. Sheila, thank you so much. Thank you all, again, thank you all very much for making, I know some of you made long journeys, there's people here from Dublin and Cavan, and I don't think there's anyone from America or Australia, but, so thank you, it means an awful lot, and please God we might be back here again next year. Thank you for the
Now this concludes the formal part of the evening, and congratulations again to Pat and Course, and my thanks to you all for being here. The book is available in all the local shops, and the proceeds are going to send items in Newcastle West as they did last time. And I just have to say that Fergus Scandal was unavailable this evening as chair of the Friends of St. Items, but two other representatives are here, Maura and Cora, from St. Items. Now I'll end with a quote from Emily Dickinson. A word is dead when it is said, some say. I say it just begins to live that day. And on that note, long may words live. Thank you all for being here, enjoy the night, and above all, buy the book. Thanks very much indeed.
Great to see you in the